Well, 25 minutes away from 4 o'clock. Good to have you with us on today. I'm Gareth Edwards. Climate change is often a talking point and then forgotten about until we start seeing extreme flooding in our coastal areas, especially down in the Western Cape, experiencing very high rises in water levels, resulting in dangerous and costly flooding down in the Western Cape. It's not even to speak of the damage caused by the winds. Dr Jan De Vynck is a paleoecologist at the University of the Witwatersrand, or Wits if you will. Doc, good afternoon to you. I want to talk about the flooding and climate change, all those good things in a second, but help me understand so I can understand where you're coming from. What is a paleoecologist?
Well, yes, I study ancient ecology. The Cape, or the Western Cape province, is globally famous for, our ancestors, cognitively modern humans came about here in the Cape, and we look at the ecology surrounding these people and their habitats long ago. We also, therefore, look at paleoclimate, and that's probably one of the reasons I'm here today.
Yeah, and what does the annals of history tell a specialist like you then versus now? What do you read into this?
Well, humans are same species. Homo sapiens has gone through climate change more than once in the past. And we can clearly see, obviously, we survived it once barely, and we seem to thrive from adapting to climate change. So our ancestors from the past are an extremely good example for us, actually.
So what you're seeing now, if you were to look back at the history books and the records, for example, what we're experiencing now, is this a 100-year flood? Is this something that happens every couple of generations? Does this seem unusual based on what history tells you?
Well, it's not exactly unusual. This winter has been, for once again, a very good winter, as we would say of old. So climate goes through various cycles, smaller to bigger cycles, and this would be, in our perspective, a smaller cycle. But one can clearly see that we are going through climate change, whether you're looking at whatever cycle. If we're looking at a bigger cycle, that is definitely happening. It is debatable of what extent we are contributing to the climate change happening at present.
I was about to ask you this, this change we're going through at the moment, what we're experiencing on a scale of measuring climate change. How does someone in your field, Doctor, begin to put what we're seeing now, the flooding, the damaging winds, the heavy rains, how does this fit into climate change? Because you're going to have those climate change debunkers saying this is normal, but I suppose this does fit into a climate change cycle of some sorts.
Yes, absolutely. So if we just look at the last 20 years or so, people started talking about global warming. And then we all started moving over to climate change. We can clearly see in the past, for instance, the previous warm period, the previous interglacial. So we get ice ages and warm periods, glacials and interglacials. And the previous interglacial, we saw the sea level being 8 to 10 meters higher than today's interglacial. And people need to remember that climate change is just not only sea level rise, but it's also weather patterns that change systematically as these warm periods move over into cold periods. We see that humans have definitely are having an effect on climate change, but it might be a smaller effect than we think. We know of a specific theory, it's called the Malinowski theory, that explains why we have these warm periods and then ice ages, and this pattern that exists quite rhythmically, at least for the last 450,000 years. And these powers are quite strong. I mean, they're celestial powers to do with the Earth's axis and its wobble, etc., that change over specific periods. But we see that this is definitely happening. And what we do see from the past, looking at old climate, paleoclimate, is that when an ice age ends and a warm period starts, and vice versa, when a warm period ends and ice age starts, we see quite a radical fluctuation in climate. You know, ice ages, we see the sea levels drop because there's more ice on the poles.
Right.
But just when one starts, we see sea levels rise before they actually drop. So it's clear that we are going through climate change at the moment, and we will be going through it for a considerable amount of time as a species. It's just how we as a species can adapt and thrive through all of this.
When it comes to the human impact on the climate and thus climate change and the effect we're having on that, Doctor, do you get a sense that however small it might be, however large it might be, that we're seeing the frequency and the severity of climate change being increased compared to all those many years ago? As you say, it's sort of cyclical, it's rhythmical, I think it was the phrase you used. But are we making it worse, and are we making it occur more often?
I think so, yes. Our carbon emissions are pretty radical, and they are increasing. We are, our efforts, we know all about this stuff. But the amount of carbon into the atmosphere is quite a significant factor. Although we've also seen this happen in the past, huge carbon emissions before humans were even around. So we definitely are seeing a rhythmic increase in these dramatic weather pattern changes or increases. And that is also very indicative of previous climate change in the past. For instance, when we were studying old climate in ice ages along the Cape, to understand human adaptation along this area better, we can clearly see, for instance, an increase of cold fronts. The winter rainfall regime increases during ice ages compared to warm periods. So our influence, the normal swing of things that happen anyway, I am not sure. That is a debatable question. Our actual impact on climate change is definitely debatable. If you look at this and you study it a bit, you'll see that they talk about, they measure of confidence in their models. So they'll say high, medium, or low confidence because no one's actually sure. But I do feel that, we can clearly see an increase, and that might just help us, it will ring a bell, increased bell for us to stand together, to collaborate in have an effect on, how climate is in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's without a doubt, I think the human species is making it a lot worse than it actually needs to be. But fascinating that it's cyclical, and the annals of history give us some kind of guidance. Doctor, fascinating. I certainly hope we speak again, making time for us this afternoon, all the way from the University of the Witwatersrand, Dr. Jan De Vynck, a paleoecologist. What a fascinating career to be in. But you can see how the comparison between what has happened historically and where we are at the moment, it is cyclical, it is rhythmic, it does have a pattern to it. It doesn't make it any less severe, of course, but I suppose one could argue that we probably should start to be better prepared as a country and as a species in South Africa.